Well, welcome. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the August 2024 Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective. And thanks for joining us. As always, this webinar series is presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at Western Kentucky University in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information System, NIDIS, and in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. Production and delivery of this webinar reflects the contributions of many partners committed to serving the needs of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and its people. And our next regularly scheduled webinar will be on Thursday, September 5th. That's again the first Thursday of the month. And as always, it'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central Time. And this webinar is being recorded. And actually, it's not being recorded. I have to hit, let me get out of this for a second. Because we had... Okay, now it's being recorded. All right, let me pick up where I left off. Okay, and as always, this webinar is being live streamed on the Kentucky Climate Center YouTube channel, and the webinar is being archived, so you can watch it again later if you so desire. Well, without further ado, let me jump into this. What you see there in the background is an image from earlier in the month of July and out in Pike County, looking at a little rainfall, much needed rainfall in the distance there. So they didn't get quite as much in Pike County in eastern Kentucky as maybe a lot of the state, but we'll take a look at that as we go. And as always, we'll take a look at the recent conditions and then impacts, and then we'll end by looking at the outlooks and a summary and then questions and discussion at the end. On the left there is an image, a photo sent to the Climate Center from Neil Clements, a nice 22-degree halo there at sunrise, and you see the little sundogs on the left and right of that. Beautiful picture out of Daviess County. And on the bottom is, I don't know the date of this, I think it's just a few days ago, from Bobby Barker out in Campbellsville, and some nice severe storms off in the distance, some nice striations there. We'll have several other photos of some nice storms seen across the area. And this is a kind of a typical picture for Kentucky this time of year. Quite a bit of haze last few days of July. This is kind of hazy. The air quality wasn't so good for a couple of days there near the end of July with the heat and humidity that's pretty common this time of year. And that was from Shelby County, from our Mesonet station there. Well, let's jump into the temperatures. For a large part of the state, it was a pretty average month temperature-wise, at least for the western half. For the eastern half, it was a tad on the warm side. Collectively, the state was above normal by 0.9 degrees, which Fahrenheit, which makes this the 30th warmest July on record out of the 130 years of records. So about a degree above average. But if when we look at the breakdown of the climate divisions, if you were in the far western climate division, you were actually 0.1 degree cooler than average. But for the most of the state, the bluegrass, the eastern half, you were anywhere from 1.1 to 1.2 degrees above average. The summer, the daily highs were slightly warmer than that, especially across central and eastern Kentucky, and slightly cooler than average, again, across the western third. The nighttime lows were pretty consistent across the state, near average, or slightly on the warm side in some areas. But overall, fairly close to average, if not a little above average, especially across the eastern half. Now, if we take a look at the year as a whole so far, going back to January 1st, we're averaging about 3.5 degrees above normal. A lot of that was from our winter months, January, February, and because we were so much above normal those first few months, we've remained among the warmest years so far. So far this year ranks as the fourth warmest, knocking out last year, which was then the fourth warmest at 2.8 degrees. So far this year, we're running around 3.5 degrees. So it looks like, at least so far, we'll take that fourth warmest spot away from last year. 2012 is actually running at 4.9 degrees above average at this point in the year. So they were running first at that time. But the latter half of that year was quite a bit cooler. So 1921 remains the warmest year on record. But so far, we're staying in that number 4 spot. And pretty consistent across the state, anywhere from 3 to 4 degrees, pretty much statewide. So, looking at precip now, we'll start with the last week, which really has helped a lot of the driest areas of the state. You see that the highest amounts across central Kentucky, some of the driest areas before this past week. And you see, and this includes yesterday's numbers. So you see anywhere from 2 to 4 inches across that swath across central Kentucky. Areas to the west, less than an inch over the last week in some areas. And then across eastern Kentucky, anywhere from 1 to 2 inches. We could still use a little more in some of those areas. Going back 2 weeks, again, you see this nice swath across a lot of the driest regions of the state. So the rain's been falling where we need it the most for the most part, especially over the last 2 weeks. And so these 2-week averages are pretty healthy, 3 to 4 inches above across a pretty large swath. And again, less than an inch across some areas of the west and then areas to the northeast. Now, if we go back 30 days, it starts to look more like the drought map that we'll see after a while. We see this nice swath of over 7 inches, 6+ inches across this swath from roughly Owensboro down to Bowling Green, and nice healthy area there. But you go to central Kentucky, you see 3.19 inches for a month, up towards Cincinnati, Covington area, especially across Appalachia there in the northeast, you see a 2.29. So some pretty low amounts for this time of year for a month. And you compare that 2.29 inches up in the northeast to the 8+ inches across the middle of the state, and you see quite a gradient there. And that reflects the drought map that we see today. Now, if we go back 2 months and 3 months, we see that same pattern setting up. You see this nice healthy swath out in west central Kentucky of here over 15 inches for the last 2 months, whereas again, areas of central northern Kentucky, you see 5-6 inches for the 2-month period. So quite low for this time of year. And again, similar pattern going back 3 months. Again, you're approaching some areas 20, even 25 inches over the last 90 days. At a couple of sites, but then you go to the northeast, and again, you're looking at less than 7 inches for the last 3 months. So pretty dry in some areas, but the last month has definitely helped. And the last few weeks have helped a lot. And if we look at percent of normal, again, this kind of reflects the maps we just saw. This is just looking at the last month. You see areas of 2 to 3 inches or so up in the north and northeastern areas of the state, but quite a bit more across. You see Bowling Green there and up towards Owensboro and areas across the south and west of the state. And percent of normal, again, kind of the same story. You see quite a bit below normal across, Lexington areas north and east from there, even less than 50% in some areas of some counties across the Northeast. Now, interestingly, if we look at the year as a whole, it's again, you see that same pattern because of the influence of the summer, but overall, pretty fairly close to normal. Most areas, well, about half the state is above normal, half below, but overall, not too bad when you take the year as a whole. And just looking again at 30, 60, 90-day maps, we kind of see what we just walked through. Lots of greater than 150% in this Owensboro to Bowling Green line. But then between Cincinnati and Lexington over towards Louisville, pretty dry the last 30, especially the last 60 days. And so altogether, Kentucky averaged 5.66 inches of rainfall during July. That's 1.25 inch above normal, which is 129% of average. Now that's a statewide average, of course. And if you just look at, say, the Bluegrass region, Climate Division 3, they averaged just over 4 inches, which is a half inch below normal. That says 91% of normal that's the whole climate division. But of course, some areas within that were quite a bit lower than that 91%. So that puts July as actually the 25th wettest July on record. Depending on where you live, that was probably a lot higher or lower. But we were fortunate to have that because we were so far behind before. And but then you look at the year as a whole, and we stand at 29.77 inches, which is just above normal, which puts us as the either the 66th wettest or the 64th driest, depending on if your glass is half full or empty. And that puts us at almost exactly average out of those 130 years of records. So so far this year, we're very average on rainfall. So going to the drought monitor, you see those dry areas across and around Lexington, and across the areas of central eastern Kentucky, and that extends across all of Appalachia. You go to West Virginia, southeastern Ohio, and it's even drier there, where they have severe drought in some counties. And if you go far enough east to Maryland, you have extreme drought, or areas of northern Virginia. But overall, a pretty patchy network of dryness across some areas of the mid-Atlantic, eastern Appalachia region, and then some areas of the plains, and especially the mountain west. Zooming into Kentucky, again, this is subject to change maybe substantially by next week. But as of now, we do have this moderate drought, of course, across some areas of central Kentucky and then around the Covington area. And then some areas across far eastern Kentucky. And how has that changed since we last met a month ago? Well, increased dryness across areas of central Kentucky, but whoops, how'd that happen? Whoops. Can you all see that? All still there? And so, yeah, areas between Louisville and Covington have improved over the last month, but a large portion of the state up until the last few days have been relatively dry. So looking at soil moisture, again, it's fairly wet over much of the state, especially looking at the 7-day average. Most of the stream flows look pretty good. You see some below normal across eastern portions, some very much below normal near Covington across the northern fringe, northern counties, but overall pretty close to normal or normal. The 28-day average, you see quite a few below normal or much below normal stream flows, but those I believe have improved quite a bit, as shown by the 7-day average. And again, you look at these national images, and you see a lot of the dryness across Appalachia, especially as you get east of Kentucky, and but quite a bit of improvement to the north, and especially the northwest across Indiana, Illinois since May and June. And the evaporative demand drought index, of course, it is summertime, a lot of evaporative demand. And you see those areas across eastern Kentucky, central Kentucky highlighted, especially over that the 3-month period, but the last month has improved, and I think you'll continue to see that improvement there going forward. And just looking at a handful of measurement sites across the state, starting in the west with Graves County, you see it has dried out there. They're not getting quite the rainfall in the far west that a lot of areas have seen. And so you see going back to the middle of July, quite wet during that period of time, but a lot of drying since then, and not a lot of replenishing of the soil, at least at the upper levels there. Now, moving into the central areas of the state, Hart County, you see they're very dry by the end of June, but with all the added rain, especially recently, you see the rebound there and the moisture there. So quite wet now in areas of west central Kentucky. And then as we move east, especially starting in the southeast, Owsley County, you see they have rebounded as well. They've gotten quite a bit of rain over the last week or so, and so you see those moisture levels rebounding pretty well there. And even at the lowest levels, 20 and 40 inches. But just to the north, Bath County, you see they're pretty dry, and they haven't seen quite the rain that they have to the south. So they're still fairly dry, although the nature of this site, it'll take a bit of rain to get those numbers up. Now, moving on to severe weather, we've had a fair share of severe weather across the state in July, mostly what we would call mesoscale convective systems. In some ways, your garden variety summer convection. Fortunately, not too much damage, but we did have a couple of pretty interesting days, you might say, across the state. This is an image from just a few days ago, July 30th, here at our farm site here in just on the south side of Bowling Green. So a nice system moving in there. Here's one in Allen County, just the same day, probably the same system. Nice image there, that storm moving in. And one more gust front, this being from July 12th out in Union County. So you see the heavy rain back behind that initial front. So we started the month off with a bang on July 4th. There was an EF1 tornado that hit the west end of Louisville downtown and caused some house damage and uprooted trees, caused a bit of a mess there for it wasn't a terribly long path, but it did do some damage there, and it was an EF1. So not quite the fireworks they were looking for in Louisville that night. And this is a summary of, we had roughly 6 days in July where we had more widespread storms around, and really just 2 of these days were most impactful. But like I said, July 4th, we had the 2 tornadoes in Louisville area, one downtown, and then a wind event across eastern Kentucky on the 11th. On 16th, another couple of tornadoes in the region, one across south central Kentucky. Whoops. And then on a couple of big events, July 29th, a couple of big wind events that moved through the state, caused some wind damage around the Louisville metro area. And then a much more widespread event just yesterday that caused quite a bit of wind reports across areas of the state. So altogether for the month, we had 7 tornado reports, 91 severe wind, and 2 hail reports. So then the question is, well, how does that stack up with previous Julys? How are we doing so far this year? How does 2024 compare to other years? Well, let's start with the Louisville WFO region. You see it there right in the middle, 2024. So we're right in the middle of the pack for central Kentucky areas in the Louisville WFO region, and right in the middle. So that's good. We're not in the bottom list there with all these 80s years, but we're not up here with 2011, 2012 either. So that's good. And if we go to Jackson, again, we're maybe even a little below normal down here. Not quite 100 yet. 100 warnings combining the tornado and thunderstorm warning. So that's good. But we go to Paducah, and wow, right now we're in, I think, 5th place for the number of fifth or sixth place with the number of warnings issued so far this year. So quite a few across the Paducah region. So yeah, 415 so far for them. Now moving on to ag. This is, of course, it's a beautiful picture from Clark County with the hay there baled, and had quite a few hot days this summer, but quite a few days, dry days as well to get out in the fields. Compared to last year, compared to the 5-year average, we are dry in a lot of areas. So you see dry, short, or very short, or it's over 30% of topsoil moisture. So pretty dry in a lot of areas. A lot of areas, especially again across central eastern Kentucky, can use some rain, and hopefully today and next few days they'll continue to get that. Looking at corn compared to previous years, we're running slightly below average for the corn condition. Just over 60% is good or excellent. Here's a little table here showing a few crops and whatnot. Livestock doing very well, hay doing well, but pasture not quite as good. Soybeans not great. They are running ahead of schedule compared to previous years, but the condition is slightly below average compared to the 5-year average and last year. We were doing fairly well with corn and soybeans back in June, but then the drier weather hit and you see that downturn in the condition. Hopefully that'll improve. Now looking ahead, this was generated yesterday, but well, I guess maybe this morning, but it shows some of the highest rainfall amounts forecast over the next week to primarily be across central and eastern Kentucky, areas that need it the most, right in the heart of our driest areas right now. So hopefully this pans out, and hopefully today's rain will, hopefully this is more than just today's rain and tomorrow. But they are expecting the hurricane season to resume, hence the lot higher rainfall amounts forecast, possibly over Florida and areas along the East Coast. There is a chance for some excessive heat maybe a week from now, so we'll see if that pans out, but it looks like maybe a day or so of that, but nothing too terribly major. For this time of year, or hottest time of the year, we'll take a day if that's all it turns out to be. Now looking ahead, the 6 to 10-day outlook, they are forecasting high pressure to dominate across much of the country. They're forecasting a ridge to build across the west with a trough across Canada, across the Northeast, which will keep us warm, but not terribly hot. So maybe slightly above average, and maybe slightly above average for precip. How much of that includes today's rains? Probably a lot of that, but that's okay. And if we extend that out to 8 to 14, it's kind of an extension of the same pattern, strengthening of that trough, and which brings in more closer to normal temperatures for Kentucky. And we retain that slightly above average chances for precip, which is good news. Now, if we look at the month, we see continued above average temperatures, with maybe after the next 2 weeks, maybe our precip chances fall, but most of Kentucky's in what they would call equal chances for above or below normal precip. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. They're calling for an extension of the ridge to extend somewhat down into the lower plains, Mississippi Valley, and which could keep areas to the west dry. But again, most of Kentucky would sees, I think, equal chances of precip there. Now, if we go out further for the season, June, July, August, again, continued warm temperatures and equal chances for precip. The no strong signals here indicating one way or another for precipitation, but continued warm through the end of the year. And then if we do look at the temperatures going out for really the next year, we are forecast to be dominated by the La Nina event that's developing, which during a typical La Nina event, Kentucky stays above average temperature-wise. So, and that's predicted here, and that's really dominating this long-term outlook. So we see above normal temperatures for pretty much the southern half of the country throughout the period, and that includes Kentucky as well. For precipitation, we see equal chances for the fall and the late fall, early winter through January. So equal chances, maybe above normal chances to the north, below to the south. Again, we're kind of sandwiched between those two, but as you'd expect with a La Nina year, they are forecasting, actually, so you see they're predicting above normal precip for us come late winter, early spring, and then equal chances after that. So no dry weather predicted, at least currently. So here's the forecast for the El Nino, La Nina watch, and we are under what's called a La Nina watch. There is a 70% chance that La Nina develops. It's a little late in coming compared to their original thinking. And but again, by August, September, October, they expect we'll be in a full-fledged La Nina at that point. And that is forecast to last through the winter, which is when these El Nino, these INSO events have the greatest impact here in Kentucky. And here's the forecast. Again, it's not a strong event, but it is forecast to satisfy the La Nina criteria. And so again, just as a reminder, this is, if you take all the La Nina events and average them together, Kentucky is typically above normal for the November through March months for temperature. And we're typically wetter than normal for these La Nina events. And sure enough, that's what they're forecasting. And again, this is really dominating that long-term forecast that we saw. Now going back to our drought outlook, the current drought that they are predicting our current dry areas to remain dry through August currently. But as we go to the seasonal outlook, they are predicting that that will improve and be removed altogether. So, and that could be removed fairly quickly given the rains that we're getting now. And in fact, they're predicting improvement across all of the drought across eastern half of the country, but they're forecasting increased drought across the mountainous west. Now, if we turn to the fire outlook, unfortunately, because today is the first, these haven't been updated yet. I'm not sure what time these are updated on the first, but they're not updated yet. So these are from last month, issued on July 1st. But for August, September, normal fire potential across Kentucky. But at least as of a month ago, they were forecasting above normal fire potential for eastern Kentucky for October. And this is given the dryness across the eastern portions of Appalachia, across the state. I suspect this will remain in the latest updates from today. So in summary, overall, we've had a tale of two climates. The West, which is pretty cool there, but it's really been average temperatures, but generally wet, especially for July. Versus the eastern half of the state, which has been quite dry and warmer than the West, which is not typical. And of course, this year remains the fourth warmest on record. July was our 30th warmest, which means July wasn't that hot necessarily, but just slightly less than a degree above normal. But it's been a warm year, and July just kind of continues that trend, at least for most of the state. Now, July precip was excellent overall. Again, we were quite warm, but remained dry for the northeastern half of the state till the last few days, last week or so. And but the longer-term forecast is generally normal rainfall, maybe slightly above normal rainfall for the state for the remainder of the year, but with above normal temperatures. And La Nina is coming, and that'll probably have the greatest impact on our winter to come. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop, and we can answer any questions you might have. Any questions, thoughts from anyone? We are under a thunderstorm watch. If you haven't seen that, we're under a watch through a fairly large portion of the state until I believe it's 8 o'clock this evening. So yet another round of storms, and that'll be good.
But Jerry, you made mention of the tropics a little bit ago. The tropical wave over Hispaniola has now been tagged as Invest 97L, and that's been given a high chance of development at 70%. So it looks like it's likely we're going to have another named entity, possibly getting into the Gulf of Mexico by the weekend. Remains to be seen whether or not that impacts Kentucky. Of course, Beryl did, as you recall, a few weeks ago. There's a large divergence, though, a large spread in the models once you get beyond 72 hours out. Some are taking this right over the Florida Peninsula. Others are taking it as far east as the Central Gulf. Of course, if it goes that far west, I should say, then it increases the chance that it might bring effects to Kentucky in terms of more widespread rainfall. But that's very much up in the air right now.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for that update, Shane. And I saw Chip just posted there's already a thunderstorm warning for Union and Henderson counties, so it's working its way in. These MCSs have been just beautiful on radar. In case you've gotten to see those the last few days, they're just classic storms, and much needed as well. Not necessarily the wind damage, but the rain for sure. But yeah, thanks for that update, Shane. That's good to know. Yeah, I've seen some mention of the Julian oscillation kind of inhibiting hurricane development. I've also heard that the dust coming off of Africa was much above normal, inhibiting hurricane development. But both of those are forecast to wane a bit, and so we should see an uptick in our hurricane activity, at least within a few weeks, if not sooner. I do know those sea surface temperatures in the Gulf are running above normal. For the Pacific, for around California, Alaska, it's actually below normal. But for the Atlantic and the Gulf, it's much above normal right now. So it wouldn't surprise me if that latest depression system doesn't develop into something pretty quickly. Any other questions or thoughts, updates? Okay. Well, I won't keep y'all, but thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back. Like I said, September 5th will be our next meeting, and we look forward to you joining us then. So thank you all very much. Yep. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.